Right. Hi, everybody. I see we've had quite a few people join here. Thank you for watching as we figure out our technology. We appreciate you all. We've got 21 attendees so far and counting. We're so excited to have you all here. Happy Monday. It's Monday, right? Pretty sure. Happy Monday. And I'll give everyone a couple more minutes here. But hopefully you are here for the National Disability Employment Awareness Month panel, hosted by Special Olympics Colorado, with some really, really phenomenal guest speakers, as you can see. Right. Okay. Well, I want to make sure we have more than enough time to hear from all of our wonderful panelists. So I'll go ahead and get started. First, I want to welcome and thank you all so much for being here for our National Disability Employment Awareness Month panel. This is hosted by Special Olympics Colorado and our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. My name is Stephanie Levine. I am our Athlete Leadership and Family Services Manager, and I'm really excited to be your facilitator today for this panel. So before I get into some quick facts and introductions, I'd like to say we had more than 40 people register for the webinar via Zoom, and then many more joining us on Facebook Live. Please just note that this is a webinar format, so you won't be able as an attendee to mute and unmute or use your camera, and that's okay. You'll just be an active listener. You can also, use the Q&A box if you have any questions that you would like to send. And panelists, for you all, I will be monitoring the Q&A, so you shouldn't have to worry about that. I will also throw in some questions from Facebook Live as they come in. And that's about it here. So without further ado, I want to talk a little bit about why we're here. Special Olympics Colorado, although we are majorly a sports organization, we strive for inclusion at every level possible, and that includes employment. So we are incredibly excited to hear from some amazing panelists in the community, how you all are deeply involved and passionately advocating alongside of the intellectual disability community through employment and through the missions of your individual organizations. So without further ado, I'm going to go through our very brief slideshow here for those who are a little bit more visual. So what is National Disability Employment Awareness Month, besides a lot of words? It is an event held every October to commemorate the many and varied contributions of people with disabilities to America's workplaces, economy, day-to-day lives. I know a month doesn't seem long enough because it's not. We should celebrate it all year, but we're lucky enough to have a panel today focusing on that. Here's a short visual that's just taken from last year's census about different types of disabilities that people live with. Vision difficulties or disabilities, difficulties or disabilities with self-care, independent living, a cognitive disability. There are so many different disabilities or differences that people have. And today we're going to talk about what that has to do with equal employment. So according to the US Bureau of Labor Statistics, just 18.7% of individuals with a disability were employed last year. In contrast, the employment population ratio for those without a disability was 65.7% in 2017. So that is a pretty large difference. And we're here today to talk about that. So I'm very excited to allow our panelists to introduce themselves. I have a short slide of their photo and their title so that you all can see them and hear them. All right. So Catharina, if you want to introduce yourself first.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Catharina Hughey, and I am the Executive Director and Board Chair of Dirt Coffee, a coffee shop that's located in downtown Littleton. Thank you.
Thanks, Catharina. We're so excited to have you. Next up.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jeff Steron. I'm with I'm the Special Olympics Donor Relations Assistant and athlete.
And Jeff, do you want to tell us how long you've worked for Special Olympics Colorado?
I've worked for Special Olympics Colorado for 5 years this month.
Awesome. Happy work anniversary. And thanks for being here, Jeff.
Hi, friends. I am Kendall. I work for a small nonprofit called the Wayfaring Band. We are not a musical band of any kind, but a band of travelers. So we do adventure travel for adults with and without cognitive and developmental disabilities. And it also says here, I'm a Special Olympics swim coach. I am. Go Sharks. Thanks for having me. Good to see you.
Thanks, Kendall. Next up.
Well, good morning or good afternoon. I'm Kris Staaf. I'm the Director of Public Affairs, Government Relations for Albertson Safeway's Denver division, overseeing 5 states and about 125 stores. I'm also a Special Olympics board member, and kudos to Special Olympics for setting this up. I'm super excited to be part of this panel.
Thanks, Kris. We're so happy to have you. Thanks for being here today. And last but not least,
I'm Kyle Visser. I'm the competition assistant for Special Olympics Colorado. I've been here 9 years and I'm also an athlete.
wonderful. Thanks, Kyle, and thank you all for introducing yourselves. So with those brief introductions and a very, very short history on why we're here today, I'm going to go ahead and get into some questions. So again, for those that are joining us in the Zoom webinar, you are welcome to use the Q&A box at the very bottom. So if you look at the bottom strip of your Zoom, you should see a box that has 2 kind of chat bubbles, and it says the letters Q and A. You can click on that and you can submit your questions to us as you have them. So that's the goal here, is to really learn more about everyone's unique experiences themselves or within their organizations employing adults with intellectual disabilities. Throughout today, throughout the next hour or so, everyone might use some different words. In Special Olympics, we use the words intellectual disability. Some organizations say intellectual differences. Some say neurodiverse. And a lot of those are kind of in the same realm, but we'll explain them as we use them, depending on which representative or panelist is speaking. So as always, please ask questions and enjoy. Okay, so within this group, obviously we have a very diverse group of people, but we have some different examples of what inclusion is within each of your groups and organizations. So I'd love to hear from each of you the various roles that individuals with intellectual disabilities have in each of your organizations. So I'll go to Kendall first.
Sure, absolutely. So like I said earlier, we are a nonprofit. So that means that we have a board of directors, just like Special Olympics. So our board of directors is made up of people with and without disabilities. We really like to have, because we serve adults with disabilities, we want them to be the ones that are making the choices. So in every aspect of our organization, people or one person with a disability is involved when it comes to the decision making. So folks on our board have intellectual disabilities. And then we sort of come down into the everyday who works at the band. There are 3 full-time staff members and 1 part-time staff member. 3 out of those 4 have a disability. Some have a physical disability and some have intellectual and cognitive disabilities. So I will speak to the role that the woman with an intellectual disability has. She is in charge of our community engagement. So we built the role very specifically for her because she has a gift when it comes to speaking to people. She loves talking to people, loves talking to strangers, and is really good at building community. So we built that role very specifically for her. And then we're really lucky in that sort of as the year goes on, we get to hire different kinds of people for different projects. It might be an art project, it might be a panel, much like Special Olympics is doing right now. And so we will hire folks with disabilities for very specific projects throughout the year.
Great, thank you, Kendall. And I'll go to Kris next and just repeat the question because I know I'm so focused on people's answers that I forget to. So if you could just tell us what various roles that people with intellectual disabilities have in your organization or company.
Thank you, Stephanie. Well, anyone that's been in any of our stores in Colorado and around the country will have seen their various positions. And it's really, I think, based on what the comfort level of the employee is. We've got a lot of people with intellectual disabilities that are what we call courtesy clerks, and they could be bagging groceries, they could be checking, they could be doing some inventory. Really just depends on what the comfort level is and the skill set. But as a company, hiring people with intellectual disabilities is something that's really woven into our culture. I want to say we have somewhere in the neighborhood of locally a couple hundred across the company in the thousands, and just incredible employees. They are hardworking. They work with us for many, many years, and we're very, very lucky to have them on our team, and look forward to continuing on that path. I think of some of the folks here just down the street at my local Safeway store that every time I walk in there, they're excited. They're telling me what they're up to. They're just so much pride in the work that they do. And so as a company, we are very, very lucky to have people with special needs, Special Olympians, to be part of our team.
Great, thank you, Kris. And I'll go over to Catharina now. What are the various roles that people with intellectual disabilities have in your organization?
Hi, Stephanie. Yeah, I'll preface that I am one of those that are using a different word than intellectual differences or disabilities. We use the word neurodiversities or neurodivergent, and just a little background on that is it's the variation of the human brain and how it may socialize, learn, or think. And it was a term that was coined by Judy Singer. So I just give you guys a little update, and it kind of brings us into what we do at Dirt Coffee. We are a coffee shop, like I mentioned before, and also a nonprofit, and we work with neurodivergent individuals and employ and empower. And that means that we have long-term staff that are at the coffee shop that are neurodiverse, both with intellectual and physical disabilities, actually, that we represent. And we kind of try to mirror what we see in the statistics that 1 in 4 people have a disability. So we always want to kind of match that ratio and be intentional in our shop to do the same. We also run our intern program, which is our inclusive employment internship program, with about 20 to 30 individuals every year that come to have a paid work experience with us for 3 months with a one-on-one job coach. And then we look to find them jobs afterwards. And then last, the same as like Kendall was saying, we have neurodivergent individuals in our board, and our volunteers, and our partnerships. So even right now, while we're working on some new things, we think about going with organizations that we know as an Access Gallery or the Center for the Blind. So just always being really thoughtful of how you can use your organization to really bring others in and lift them up.
Thank you so much. And Jeff and Kyle, do you want to talk a little bit about the different roles, and I can add some into if you'd like, but the different roles that people with intellectual disabilities have within Special Olympics Colorado?
Well, I was recently promoted as the donor relations assistant, and part of my job is I go out and make phone calls to donors and make and speak. And I know that we have another athlete, Amanda, who comes in that helps write letters for us that we send to donors, and and thank you notes that are given to donors for events that one event that we just had, our Hall of Fame. And Kyle and I go out and Kyle helps me in the office. I also do a little bit of administrative works. So we help sort the mail together, make sure everybody gets, it all gets to where it's supposed to go. And Kyle, do you want to say anything?
Sure. As the competition assistant, I get to enter for different competitions and set up coach envelopes, and I answer phone calls and put supplies away and do all kinds of different other things too.
Yeah, you guys are speak value into the jack of all trade position, as everyone can tell. We also have an athlete and individual with intellectual disabilities who's our board co-chair, and then various kind of short-term roles throughout the year, whether they're fellowships or maybe an internship, or just volunteer work as well, as far as Special Olympics goes. So thank you all for that question. And just an open question to everybody too. You talked a little bit about the various roles, but why is it important? Why do you feel it's so important to make sure that you have the presence of someone with, whether it be an intellectual disability or any other disability within your employee network? Why is that important to your organization and to your missions? And I'll just let anyone go first.
I can go. So in the disability activism community, there is a saying that's nothing about us without us. And what that means is if there are people or if there's an organization that is making choices for people with disabilities, that people with disabilities need to be involved in the choice making. So it's very important for our organization to have people with disabilities involved in every aspect of our decision making, every aspect of our organization, because they are the folks that we are serving. And if we don't have their voices and their input and their ideas, then who knows if we're going to actually, provide the programs that they want or that they need. So I would say that's probably the biggest reason why the band does it. And also our vision is to model an inclusive world, and to do that we actually have to model it. We can't just talk the talk.
Yeah, Kendall, I would absolutely agree. I mean, we have to have people in all aspects of various jobs throughout our stores that are supporting us. And if we're talking about diversity, if we're talking about inclusion, it starts there. And so, like I said, I feel so fortunate. And I've met so many incredible people through Special Olympics and through our stores and through other organizations like ARC Thrift Stores and through Disability Connections. There's such a tremendous workforce out there. We just need to tap into it. And that's something as a company that we're trying very hard to do.
Hey, I'll jump in as well. I mean, obviously, we want to bring more diversity in all of these work roles, right? And I think specifically for us at Dirt Coffee, being in the hospitality industry, right? I think that we have an opportunity to serve our community, but also have people who come in through our shop reach their hearts and minds to dismantle a lot of these harmful stereotypes that are built up around the jobs and the employment, and a lot of biases as well. So I think that we're kind of on two fronts, that it's like having a diverse team brings in unique perspectives, makes sure that we're always thinking, are we reaching everybody and what can we do better, and questioning that and going out and learning more, because you can always learn, right? But we also get to twofold do that for our customer interactions inside the coffee shop. And so I think that that's the part that is just, we're challenging a traditional way of thinking when it comes to hospitality service and neurodivergency in employment.
And Jack and Kyle, I'll repeat the question. Working for Special Olympics Colorado, obviously we're a sports organization, but why do you think it's important for Special Olympics Colorado to employ athletes, to employ someone with an intellectual disability? Why is that important to do?
Kyle?
Okay.
Okay.
I feel we're respected for who we are, for what abilities we can do versus the disabilities that we have.
And I think it's very important to show how productive people with intellectual disabilities and physical disabilities are in the community. I've been actually working for Special Olympics for probably over 25 years. I worked for Special Olympics in Arizona before I moved here to Colorado. And I think it's very important to have an athlete's voice. And it's very important to show what people with intellectual disabilities can do. So I hope someday you can all come to our office and see what Kyle and myself are able to do for Special Olympics Colorado, and how happy we are to be able to be a part of Special Olympics.
Thanks, Kyle. That's an awesome answer. Yeah, so I have some individualized questions for a couple of you. I want to start with Kris. As an organization, Special Olympics Colorado has worked so much with Safeway for events, sponsorships, partnerships, fundraisers, and so much more. And as you already said, in my own experience, I can go into almost any Safeway and see one of our athletes or another individual who visually has an intellectual disability, and probably so many more who you don't visually see their disability, but it's very clear that that is important to you all. And not only that, but some of them that I know have been working there for decades and held jobs for longer than most people that I know in my entire life. So can you just talk about how this presence positively affects all of the employees of Safeway, and just having that diverse employee network, more specifically, I guess, for intellectual disabilities, how that positively affects all of your employees?
That's a great question. So all of our stores operate as a team, and you've got to be inclusive with your team, right? Just like Special Olympics. And so there's camaraderie in the stores, there's pride, there's ownership, there's all of those pieces. And having someone that has an intellectual disability be successful is contributing to the success of the entire team. We have customers that seek out, specific courtesy clerks because they want to go through their line because they want to have a conversation with them. Or there's a gentleman by the name of Jimmy in one of our stores, and he had a line 10 or 12 people deep that, they wanted to stand in line because they wanted to high five him. They wanted to hear about his success at Special Olympics or his success at school. And so I think it just brings a whole nother level of support, enthusiasm of the team by having someone with an intellectual disability in our stores in a position that's really customer facing. Our associates love it, our customers love it, and it's a win-win. It's been incredibly successful, and we want to continue to do more, and looking forward to what the future holds.
Thanks, Kris. That's awesome. I can say I'm guilty of going in those lines typically myself, which makes sense. But it's just so much more worth it to wait a little bit longer and have a little bit, better of a day. So Catharina, I'm going to go to you next. Welcome. I personally have not been able to interact with you a lot lately, but I've done a lot of coffee drinking at Dirt. Not only do you guys make delicious coffee and other drinks, but you very obviously employ and train neurodiverse interns to learn life skills and work skills while they're making delicious cups of coffee or whatever other enjoyable beverage. But from the perspective of your organization, how have you all been able to see these interns take in the training from DIRT and then apply that to other employment opportunities? You could just talk a little bit about those successes.
Absolutely. I love that question. Because I feel like it really speaks to, there are many roles that you can have at Dirt Coffee. I think you can be on cashier, you can be back of house, inventory, and kind of the same as Kris was saying, people are excited to come in and see our interns and our staff and talk with them. We actually, not to name drop, have had a couple of past Special Olympic athletes go through our program and on our board. And so I think it's always really exciting to hear what everybody is up to. But I think specifically what we see in giving somebody the opportunity for their first job and to get across some of those hiring barriers that they might face, the biggest thing is the confidence. We have somebody who starts their intern and maybe doesn't say hi to you that morning yet, or tell you about their day, or feel very nervous that this is going to be something they might not be able to pick up. But I think, you know, with the support of myself, my job coach, and all of my baristas are job coaches as well, we really show this person that they are capable of so much more and of like learning new qualities and skills that they might have not thought that they would learn. And that they have such a unique perspective and that we all enjoy hearing from them. You know, like we really do want them to bring their creativity, to share with us if we could be doing something better, because they're like, hey, maybe this doesn't work. And they're the ones that notice it because they're the ones experiencing it, right? Like that's always going to be the case. We can't assume what that might be. So I think like number one is our biggest takeaway is confidence. We have seen people go from our program who didn't even consider community college or technical school afterwards, immediately enroll afterwards. We have people who have been placed in theaters to, of course, like Safeways and King Soopers and Habitat for Humanity. But I think the other big portion is that they really get to highlight what is meaningful employment, right? We talk about getting people into jobs, but I think there is a second tier to that, that it needs to be meaningful and it needs to be something that they care about and that they also enjoy. And so I think it's also helping them figure out what that might be. And we've had people come in and they're like, we want to work in coffee. I want to have my own coffee place. But it could also just be like they want to do film. So maybe we're like, hey, maybe you help us with social media. We kind of try to match that and also grow their passions at the same time.
That's great. And that really brings us to my next question, actually. So thank you. But we talk a lot about meaningful involvement and meaningful roles, and there's no one definition of that, whether you have a disability or not. Everyone has a different meaning to life, to their job, to their, you know, all the people in their lives that have meaningful involvement. So Jeff and Kyle, my next question is for you both. You are both Special Olympics athletes, but you are also employees of Special Olympics Colorado. And so as you both talked about through your roles, you help fundraise money and organize the events that you then get to compete in with your peers who are athletes as well. So my question for you, Jeff and Kyle, is what does it mean to you both to be able to work for Special Olympics Colorado?
Well, I would say for me, it's done a lot. It's helped build my self-confidence. And it's given me a chance to meet a lot of friends. When I go out and I compete, I know the athletes are we're always glad to see each other and we always have a good time. And it's given me and being able to have a job has given me a feeling of being independent and being productive and being able to show everything that I'm capable of.
Jeff, what about you, Kyle? What has your job here meant to you?
I feel included and respected for who I am. I enjoy being able to work together with different people.
Great. Thank you both so much. And last individual question is for Kendall. With the Wayfaring band, which just as a reminder, everybody is not a musical band, but we provide travel opportunities for travelers with and without intellectual disabilities, and you all really just promote inclusion on every level. So you have a small team, and you touched a little bit about it, but you really prioritized having an employee with intellectual disabilities on your staff. Can you just talk a little bit more, and you touched on it, I know already, but a little bit more about your mission and why it was so important for you to prioritize that with the small amount of staff that you have. And I'm going to loop that in with a question that came in on Facebook. Someone asked what your favorite part is of the Wayfaring band. So those things might go hand in hand.
I'm going to answer my favorite thing last so that I can give myself a second to think about that, because that's a really hard one to answer. But it's so important to us because inclusion is important to us. We want to see a world where anyone with a disability or not could walk into a job that they want to and feel confident and have friends and feel respected and find a sense of belonging. We want that anywhere for everyone. And while we are a very, excuse me, small organization, we have to be intentional in our inclusive practices, which I think is something that I've heard both Kris and Catharina speak to, is that inclusion is not something that can just happen. It's not something that we can wish one day will be so. We have to work really hard at it. And we have to be intentional about it. And so while we are a really small organization, it is one of, or if not the most important thing about our organization. So it's very important that those roles exist, and that, like I said earlier, folks can be respected and find a sense of belonging within their job. And then my favorite thing, still couldn't come up with it in all that time. I think my favorite thing about the band is that I think this is true for me, and I think this is also true for a lot of people, but everything with the band always keeps me on my toes. No day is ever the same. No trip is the same. No group of people is the same. So everything feels exciting and everything feels brand new. It's like I get to open up a present every day when I go to work, which who doesn't love that, right?
That's awesome. Yeah, that's relatable too. I can say the same. So I'm going to switch us up a little bit because we've talked about each of kind of your unique perspectives and your missions of your organizations, and Jeff and Kyle, your individual perspectives. But I know that a lot of people have joined this panel and are watching because maybe they work for or are involved in organizations or companies that don't currently employ people with intellectual disabilities. And some people had asked, they want to leave this panel with maybe some action steps or ways that they can just start, because starting anything new seems overwhelming, and this could seem like something overwhelming too. So I'm going to start us off with a question from an attendee, actually. Someone who had said that they graduated from technical school in 2013. They graduated from an office administration program. So they have an intellectual disability, and they had difficult getting past the typing test and other tests that were required to become an administration assistant, seemingly because of their intellectual disability. So this person's question is, what do you all think we can do to change some of these processes to apply to some companies so that a disability like that maybe doesn't prevent them from getting a job that they're trying to get? And that was a great question. Thank you for the person that sent that.
Yeah, Stephanie, I think it's a great question because I think once they're employed, right, then there's an opportunity to be mentored and to be trained and to really overcome some of those issues, whether they're, they're typing or those admin skill sets. But getting your foot in the door, I think her question or his question is really the challenging part. And I often think, advocating for yourself and just, I'm a great worker, I've got great work ethic, and maybe selling yourself in those ways. And I'm trainable, I can do this, I'm trainable, give me a shot. And I know we love enthusiasm. We love people that have the desire to want to be successful and to grow within our company. And so maybe it's a little bit of that, just kind of advocating and just sharing that, this is important and I can do this. I just need to be given a shot.
Anyone else, and just what we can change in that process with some companies? How can we change maybe some of that process so that doesn't prevent people from getting a job?
Mhm. It's such a good question because I think that folks run into this barrier often, very often, that some companies, I'm thinking of like more larger corporate companies have a very specific way that you can get in. And if you don't follow all of these things, then you're just immediately, off the list. But that's absolutely not an inclusive way to hire. So I think, one of the things I'm assuming, I don't know much about the office administration program, but I'm assuming that the test was not built with anybody with a disability in mind. So it, we say all of this and it's a ton of work, but it could be going to the organization that actually builds the test and saying, here are some things that I struggled with. Would you like to hire me as a consultant? And I can help you make this more inclusive. Or much like Kris was saying, going to a specific organization that you want to work for and saying, here is what this test score says, and here is what I bring to you today, with that aside, or something like that. But unfortunately, a lot of tests and programs and like step-by-step things are not inclusive. And so it's up to us to shake and rattle and roll and change it as much as possible. But it's definitely not easy work at all.
And now is a great time, Kendall, to your point, to shake it up and rock and roll, right? Because we're hiring positions across all of our stores. This is the time, I think, to really, to put yourself out there and, see if you can't make something happen, because I feel like everyone is hiring right now. It's, how do you set yourself apart and, show that commitment to, learning, to working hard. And, I think there's opportunities for sure.
Great. All right. So thank you for whoever submitted that question. And Kris, we also had someone ask if they could even work at the Safeway warehouse. And so it's very obvious that, you all are looking for staff and looking for people who just will do a good job. And that's really awesome. So thank you for that. I really want to get into talking about how you all might recommend that a company gets started. If it's a big company, a small company, an entrepreneur who just wants to hire intentionally, purposefully, hire someone with a disability, an intellectual disability. How would you recommend that they start? Again, loaded question.
And I'm happy to start, and I don't want to take up the whole time, but there's so many great resources out there, like Special Olympics Colorado, or we operate in Wyoming, Special Olympics Wyoming, ARC thrift stores, amazing. I mean, they've got ARC University, they've got all of these resources, right? Disabilities Connection. And so I think the organizations need to step out of their comfort zone and not be afraid and be able to ask the questions and tap into those resources, because you all do a fantastic job of, the education, the outreach, the training. And one of our pillars or goals is let's create awareness. Let's create awareness for inclusion and diversity. And so we're kind of trying to link those up together, if that makes sense. But if I were recommending or making a suggestion to someone just kind of trying to figure out where to go, next steps, ask questions. Resources are out there. Don't be afraid.
Yeah, I think that it is about being present. And I think like a really first step an organization or a single person could make is public commit to disability inclusion, right? Say that you're open and have that in your job hiring. And then I think for us, we partner with a lot of businesses, right? Because we want to get people employed after they've done their internship. And so one way is that we're looking at organizations that have done at least some type of audit to assess their equitability, their access, their belonging, and their hiring practices. You know, the question before was, you know, there was a test that you had to get through. We just recently saw this with another organization that wants people to film their questions in 1 minute, and it's computer automized. So the questions don't even know who they're talking to on the other side. And we were like, wow, this doesn't really take in all of the unique perspectives and skills that we can bring in a thought. And so I would like to also just offer, if anybody is looking for a way to transform your hiring practices, is Skillful. It is a facilitation here offered in Colorado, Indiana, I believe one more state, with the government, the governor's office. So Skillful Facilitation, if you haven't checked them out, it really teaches you as an employer how you can go past these traditional hiring questions and really focus on skills and competencies, and then how to ask those questions afterwards to help somebody get through an interview that really highlights their strengths.
I am not sure that I have anything new to add. Kris and Catharina really covered it, but I think that, you know, like they both said, there are so many resources out there, whether it be another organization that's maybe doing something similar to what you want to do, or you're looking for folks who just came out of DIRT's intern program, or, you know, there are small organizations all around Colorado specifically that are built to be job coaches and to help people throughout their, you know, employment. And so you could look at an organization like that. There are so many different resources out there. So I say, do some digging, ask a lot of questions, just like Kris was saying, because people with disabilities are out there and they want jobs. So if you've got the opportunity to give someone a job, do it. Absolutely do it.
Yeah. And Jeff and Kyle, I would love your perspective in here too. You know, for those new organizations that have never employed someone with an intellectual disability, and it seems like it's a really big deal. How would you recommend that they start on this journey?
Maybe invite, have a day where you have people with disabilities come out and they can tour their business, and you can explain to them everything and show them everything that how the business operates. Another way I would say to get started is we recently had a shadow day with United Airlines, and I went, and it was myself and I think a few other athletes that went out there, and we got to see how the whole airline operates, and they recently hired 4 of our athletes. So that was very rewarding. So maybe to either have the person that wants to hire that athlete come out and meet with them would be my suggestion. You get to know them as a person.
Yeah. What about you, Kyle? Any recommendations for companies or organizations that are just getting started?
Be patient and do a lot of training with the disability people. Help them understand what they should do in a way that they can understand it.
Great.
Thank you, Kyle. Even something that seems simple, like be patient, is a really important reminder that
a lot of people need, including myself. So thank you so much for your valuable perspective. Still on this topic of just starting to hire neurodiverse or people, neurodiverse population or people with various disabilities. For all of you, what have you seen as a big barrier to either people with disabilities getting hired, or maybe someone who does get hired and then there's a barrier at their job? I think it's important to kind of address some of those head on and talk about them and, think through some solutions. But what are some barriers that maybe you've seen, or Kyle and Jeff, that you've experienced?
I think that, Kyle, I believe you brought up a really good issue around training. So sometimes we can have people get through the interview process, they get through the front door. Kendall also mentioned it. A lot of times you have the resource to bring on a job coach on site. And I don't think a lot of people tap into that resource that can be very helpful. But then on the second fold, I feel like the hiring can sometimes be rushed for individuals and it's not meeting them at where they learn. So maybe they're visual, maybe they're sensory, just kind of having that differences, maybe they learn by repetition. But when we are trying to get people trained into jobs so quickly, we kind of forget to take that time to really walk somebody through it. And I think this goes for not just somebody that is neurodivergent, it's for anybody. I think that at the basis of anybody being really successful at their job is having solid training. And we should just do that across the board for everybody. I always think that when we're thinking about these accommodations that we want to make, I'm sure everybody's heard of like the cut curb, when they decided to cut curbs so that there would be wheelchair access. And then it turned out that helped everybody because now we can roll our suitcases up and we can roll our strollers up. And it made an impact that changed it for the entire world by making that. And that's kind of the example, is just like, it's not just for one group, this accommodation. You'll see that it will be two folds. And I think it'll make all of our staff more innovative and productive and happier at the end of the day. So training, better training.
I think, Stephanie, your question was, what kind of barriers can people run into? And immediately I was like, all of them. There are so many barriers that any of us could run into at any moment in a job. It could be transportation, not being able to get to the job site. It might be technology, maybe not having access to technology or not knowing how to use technology. It could be maybe this particular person might need directions split out into small chunks as opposed to written on all one page. So at any given moment, anyone could run into all different kinds of barriers. I would say that what's really important is to, for an employer to ask what their employee needs on a very consistent basis, not just at the very first time you hire them. What do you need? Okay, I can give you that. Check in constantly. How are you doing? What do you need now? Does your accommodation need to shift? This worked really well for a week and now it's not working anymore. Let's try something new. I think what's important to keep in mind is to stay adaptable, and that there is not one equation where a company can make it inclusive for everybody to come in. As human beings, we are all so vastly different and our experiences are so different. And so things might need to shift. You might think that one thing is going to be really great and super successful, and it might, and then it might not. And just the ability to sort of shift and be one of those bobbly things of just being able to sort of, bounce around is really what's going to help, I think. And I don't think it's fair to say that we're ever going to create something, or that I can foresee in my lifetime, where there are no barriers. So you just have to be willing to be like, oh, that's a barrier. Okay, what are we going to do now? And how are we going to work around it? Because it's pretty inevitable that there are barriers that you're going to face, and just one of those sort of hard truths that we have to accept right now. So really what you need to figure out is how to work through them and how to work through them together.
And I'll just add, Kyle, you said it perfectly. We need to be patient. We need to be patient, and we need to slow down.
Yeah,
Jeff and Kyle, anything to add there, even if it's in your current job or a previous job, if you've had any barriers?
I know I've had some days where I've been frustrated, and there's been days where I've had good days too. And I've had to try and learn to try and communicate better.
I would say for me, one of my big barriers has been with the pandemic, having to work from home. It's a lot harder for me to communicate with people when I get stuck having a problem, if there's something that's not working right on my computer, and that was in the year that I had to work from home when I recently, that was really a barrier for me, and I'm glad that I'm able now to come back to work every day.
Yeah, that's so important. And one thing I really want to make the point of here, before we get to our last question, is that so many of the things we've talked about as barriers, as important reminders, are not just for people with intellectual disabilities. Notice, I hope, those of you watching or listening have noticed a pattern here. These are helpful for everybody. These are helpful reminders for those with and without disabilities, to just be respectful and mindful and slow down. And as I'm talking quickly, slow down and just remember that everybody has a difference. And so as we go into our last question here, each of you either work with or employ or are experiencing an intellectual disability and working alongside someone with one. What is the most important thing that you've learned, whether it's a takeaway or something really meaningful, a daily reminder? And Jeff and Kyle, for you two, I think we'll start with you. Maybe something you've really learned from each other.
Something I've learned from Kyle is that is patience. I think I think that when I first started, I used to be like really kind of uptight about a lot of things, and and I think I've learned to calm down a little bit, and and sometimes Kyle and I work differently, so we have to learn how to each other's habits and things, but over the 5 years I've been here, I really enjoy working with Kyle and consider him a good friend.
I think it's been good to work with Jeff, even though we're mainly in different departments. We still do a lot of things together, and he's been good supporting me, so I've been able to support him too.
Thank you too. That's a good start. Good luck following that, the other panelists. But yeah, just what has been the most valuable maybe takeaway or thing you've learned or daily reminder of working alongside of an employee with an intellectual disability?
Yeah, I think as leaders, we have an opportunity to share our successes and to share them, create awareness, share successes, and to drive this mission forward. I think of an event that we have at Safeway. Unfortunately, we haven't had it in a while because of COVID, but we had a media employee bagging challenge where we had a member of the media with one of our Special Olympic athletes who's also a Safeway employee. And it was a race to bag groceries, and our employees actually taught the reporters how to do it in the way that was, most efficient, fast, customer service, all of that. But it was a platform for us to talk about inclusion, diversity, and hiring people with intellectual disabilities. And, I every now and then I'll come across a reporter who says, when are you going to bring that event back, Kris? Because it was so great to talk about, hiring and employment and all of these great things. But I feel like there's an obligation for us to be able to share this message. And so any opportunity that we can, and the successes that we've seen, I think that's an opportunity for us to push forward.
I'll go. I think that the best part has been for us, and what I take away every day, is creating the community and the sense of belonging. It is just like twofold what it brings back to us as when we're working together. We just heard Jeff and Kyle kind of go back and forth, but they have a relationship that they built. And I think that goes the same, that we offer a social intern night once a month, which is past and present interns and past and present staff are able to attend and just hang out and get to know each other and have a space where we can just be ourselves and share what we got going on. If it's ice skating or singing or whatever it is, or their filmmaking passions, and getting to know each other outside of just the employment. So I would really just my takeaway is to everybody to remember, we're not just workers that come in and go and leave at the end of the day, and getting to know everybody. And because then for you as the employer, you get to realize that there might be strengths that go unnoticed, that you're like, oh, wow, I just, maybe that's something you could do here at the shop. And kind of going back to what Kendall said, is being really flexible as an employer and not being stagnant. And that's been the neat thing of getting to know people outside, and then kind of rethinking what their role should be with us, maybe, not just having a static role, like this is what you do and we've got it outlined. We can always grow, so that's been a great takeaway from this.
Thanks, Catharina. Kendall.
What a great question. I've been thinking about it. I still don't know that I have one solid answer, but I think one thing that has been really impactful on our organization, as well as my personal life, is that, we believe that everybody in the world has special gifts and everybody has special needs. People with disabilities aren't the only people who need help and need support. And once we sort of shift that thinking, when we're all open about what we need, we can create a very organic community. It's very easy for us to engage in mutual aid. And when we sort of, put our needs up front and say, hey, I really need some help with this, there's probably going to be 5 people that are like, oh, that's my gift, I can help you with that. So as soon as we're aware of and sort of express some vulnerability in saying what it is that we need, we can create some really organic community. So I would say that's like the number one, as of right now, the impact that's had on me. But I bet if you asked me tomorrow, I'd have a different answer.
Absolutely. I'm just going to close out by saying, as all of you, I hope, have taken away from this, we are clearly all more alike than we are different. And although we have these words, disabilities and differences, we really, from all of us, encourage you all to just see the commonalities that you have. If you're just starting your hiring practices here, look for those commonalities. If you're continuing on your already inclusive hiring practices, continue to find those and just appreciate each person for who they are as an individual. So I just really want to thank all of you panelists for being here. Your unique perspectives are incredibly valuable, and we appreciate working with you in partnership and sharing so many of the same athletes and baristas and baggers and travelers and coworkers. So thank you all so much for coming.
And just to end it off on a positive note, the person who actually submitted the question about not getting their job currently works full-time as an athlete leadership manager for another Special Olympics state. So thank you all so much for coming. I'm going to take us off Facebook Live, but thanks for everyone else. We appreciate you.